Korea is a beautiful S-shaped peninsula that stretches out from the Asian mainland toward the sea. But this beauty has always been a strategic burden. For the empires of China and Russia, Korea was a gateway to the Pacific Ocean. For Japan, Korea was the essential gateway to the Asian continent. As the war against Japan drew to a close in 1945, the Soviet Union declared war against Japan and entered the Korean peninsula from the north. When Japan finally began to surrender, two great powers, the United States and the Soviet Union, carved the map into spheres of influence. To manage the Japanese surrender, the US and the Soviets agreed on a temporary line, the 38th parallel. Following the division at the 38th parallel, the world hoped that Korea's split would be short-lived. The United Nations stepped in to organize a democratic path forward, aiming to hold unified elections across the entire peninsula to form a single, independent government. To conduct elections in both Koreas, the United Nations established a UN Temporary Commission on Korea in November 1947. Recognizing newly independent India's high stature, India's representative ambassador KPS Menon was unanimously elected the chairman of the commission. However, elections could not be conducted because of non-cooperation from North Korea.
And subsequently, a resolution was moved in the United Nations about unification of the peninsula, and elections were supposed to be held.
But North Korea did not agree for a free and fair election. So that fizzled out. And then unilaterally in June 1950, North Korea crossed 38th parallel, which was the boundary between North Korea and South Korea, and attacked South Korea.
Soon, North Korea declared independence as Democratic People's Republic of Korea and South Korea as Republic of Korea.
And now North Korea believed in a forceful reunification, and that's what gave a signal to the North Koreans to ask Stalin, and Stalin gave the go-ahead, and that's how the invasion started.
At 4 a.m. on June 25, 1950, the silence of the morning was shattered. Under the cover of heavy rain, 90,000 North Korean troops launched a full-scale invasion across the 38th parallel. Led by 150 Soviet T-34 tanks, against which the South had no defense, the North surged across the 38th parallel. The invasion was swift and brutal. The South Korean forces, caught completely off guard and outgunned, were forced into a desperate retreat. Within just 3 days, the North Korean tanks rolled into the streets of Seoul.
South Korea responded, and it was a battle that was going on for some time, leading to a lot of casualties.
The West supported capitalist government in the South, and Russia, China supported communist government in the North.
It's an ideological war.
It's an ideological war. It's like the final frontier. Like we had the West Germany, East Germany, you had Poland, you had the other areas. So it's the final bastion between communism versus free world, democracy.
That is very unfortunate that the Korean War happened just a few years after the Second World War, because those were the days of Cold War, and between the West and the East, communism had become a major force of division, and unfortunately those battles were fought in Asia.
The speed of the assault was devastating, and the South was quickly overwhelmed. As the world teetered on the edge of a broader conflict, the battlefield shifted to the United Nations. The UN was able to muster its first ever collective action. A massive coalition formed, the Coalition of 21, under a single blue banner. UNSC Resolution number 83 of 27 June 1950 authorized creation of a UN command for military aid to South Korea, with its commander from US forces. Countries sent their armed contingents, and countries including India sent medical missions as part of UN command.
And United States was supporting South Korea. November of 1950, they defeated the North Korean troops and then went almost close to the Yalu River. Yalu River is the border between Korea and China.
And it was never anticipated that the Chinese would ever enter because assessment never said. But when China decided to enter, Chairman Mao, he decided that he needed to enter. Millions of volunteers, they call them volunteers.
They entered the war and they were starting to defeat the UN forces, which were mainly American forces, and then drove them back up to the 38th parallel. So China played a very major role on the side of North Korea.
India chose to provide a mission of healing, sending a unit that would become the conscience of the war. India decided to send the 60 para field ambulance to the war zone to heal, but not to kill.
India smartly opted because of its stature as a non-aligned nation. And India chose and opted to provide the largest contingent ever of medical assistance because the aim then was, along with the war, the devastation, the casualties, the effect of the war on the locals and the soldiers had to be handled. And that's what brought 60 parafield ambulance into the war in November 1950.
The choice of the 60 para was a strategic and moral decision. Established in 1942, the unit was led by Colonel Arcot Rangaraj, India's first paratrooper.
He was the commander of this 60th Para Brigade, which went there as an ambulance corps. So he did commendable work and he got Mahavir Chakra for that.
60 parachute field ambulance was created in World War II. Colonel Rangaraj was India's first paratrooper. He's a medical doctor and he was India's first paratrooper also. They're airborne and the doctors are highly competent, highly professional. So India chose them to go there and the moment they got into action.
So they can go and by parachute they can go in the war zone. So they were very specialized unit.
But India's, and this was the largest medical component ever, comprised of 627 medical personnel who were inducted in South Korea from where they supported the forces. And this force treated 2.5 lakh, in fact 2,26,000 casualties on astride both borders.
India had already paid a heavy price in the war. Colonel Unni Nair, a brilliant officer and diplomat, arrived in Korea very early as part of the UN Commission. In August 1950, while traveling near the front lines at Waigwan, his vehicle hit a landmine. Colonel Nair was killed instantly, becoming India's first casualty in the Korean War.
Colonel Unni Nair is the highest ranking officer from Indian side that actually got. He was the first peacekeeper who was killed. So he went to investigate a particular violation that had taken place in Waigwan, and that's where his jeep had got blown off in a landmine, and his life ended on 12th of August 1950.
The only reason the war wouldn't end was the problem of the prisoners of war, POWs. The UN forces held over 170,000 prisoners, while the North had very few in comparison. The two sides were stuck in a total deadlock. The North demanded that all their soldiers be sent back by force, while the UN insisted that prisoners should not be forced back if they didn't want to go.
That the question of prisoners became very thorny because the two sides had prisoners of war, and they said that those prisoners do not want to return to the other side.
India stepped in to break this deadlock. India proposed a plan that became the foundation for the Armistice Agreement.
India came up with this proposal that there should be a neutral nations repatriation commission, NNRC, where all the prisoners of war by both sides should first come under their control. Then this neutral commission would individually ask every prisoner of war, where do you want to go?
So I think it is a very complicated operation, and when we say armistice is one thing, but the execution is where India takes the diplomatic credit and a milestone in its achievements.
Initially, Soviet Union was opposing that India should be the chairman of the Neutral Nations Repatriation Commission. That was in January and April of 52, and gradually this communication started with India and Soviet Union, approved by Stalin, and so they changed their views and accepted India as chairman of the Neutral Nations Repatriation Commission.
India was tasked with providing the exclusive armed force to support the Neutral Nations Repatriation Commission, NNRC. The relevant portion of the agreement states, sufficient armed forces and any other operating personnel required to assist the Neutral Nations Repatriation Commission in carrying out its functions and responsibilities shall be provided exclusively by India, whose representative shall be the umpire, and shall also be chairman and executive agent of the Neutral Nations Repatriation Commission.
Who will actually supervise the prisoners of war camp, they should all come from India. And that's why this is one part of the story of India's participation in the Korean War and its participation in resolving the Korean War, which is not very well known.
This mandate led to the creation of the Custodian Force of India, CFI. India deployed over 6,000 personnel. This force was deployed to the demilitarized zone for nearly 6 months, undertaking what was widely considered the most difficult part of the post-war phase.
Actually, India sent its soldiers to implement the Armistice Agreement. India got the world to have faith in the United Nations.
India played a very, very active role. Mostly it was in the United Nations, where Mr. Dr. B.N. Rao was our chief delegate, and under the constant guidance of Mr. V.K. Krishna Menon, and also by our ambassador in Beijing, who was Mr. K.M. Panikkar, and he was very close to the Chinese leadership, because at that time United States and China did not have diplomatic relations, and China was not even a member of the United Nations.
At the heart of this volatile strip lay Zhongni, bounded by the Imjin River. Indian contingent established their camp, transforming a war-torn landscape into a sanctuary of neutrality known as Hind Nagar.
They took all the prisoners. They created a demilitarized zone called the Hind Nagar, which had 2 camps, the northern camp and the south camp. And India took over those prisoners and then handed over the prisoners.
The most profound test of Indian neutrality occurred when a Chinese CPV compound took an Indian officer hostage. Firing even a single shot would have shattered India's neutrality and potentially reignited the war on the peninsula. In an act of legendary bravery, Major General S.P.P. Thorat walked unarmed into the hostile compound to defuse the crisis personally. For this act of conspicuous gallantry and presence of mind, Major General S.P.P. Thorat was awarded the Ashok Chakra Class II.
They were advancing towards us. The soldiers prepared to meet the charge. I knew what the outcome would be. And then he said, I thought that the only thing to do is to be calm. So I told them to stop and walked in between the mob and the soldiers. And I took out my cigarette and lit it. And he said that those guys stopped advancing towards that. But
Yes, 88 prisoners of war who did not want to go either to South Korea or North Korea.
They came to India and they looked after them. Many of them became voluntarily, they went back to many countries, especially South America. And 8 of them went back, I think, to China and North Korea. And there were 8 of them who chose to stay back in India and made India their home. We healed what the war had destroyed.
India's mission concluded in February 1954, leaving an indelible mark on history. The CFI's operations demonstrated India's capacity for exemplary tact, fairness, and firmness, proving that even in the height of the Cold War, a path of principled neutrality could provide a bridge to peace.
We lost a colonel, we lost 5 other ranks also, and then we lost 3 soldiers in our ship when the journey was taking place from here.
But this is another chapter, which is a glorious chapter in India-Korea friendship and India's contribution for peace in the Korean Peninsula.
They honor sacrifices, they remember with gratitude. Gratitude is a virtue that you need to learn from the South Koreans.
Korea remembers what India had done, and it is today for us one of the most moments of the greatest pride in military history, in Indian history, in our diplomatic history.
Whether 7 decades ago or today, the people of India have remained unwavering in their support for peace on the Korean Peninsula. For this, the people of Korea hold the deepest respect and gratitude for the Indian people.
India's engagement with Korea did not begin in 1950. Long before the guns of the 20th century, a deeper connection had already been woven across the seas.
Because when we talk of India-Korea, ancient civilizations, either we talk about the princess of Ayodhya, that she went from Ayodhya to Korea in 40 years of the current era, or we talk of Rabindranath Tagore, who wrote that poem Lap of the East in 1929.
India and Korea share a rich heritage. As India moves towards its Viksit Bharat era, celebrating 100 years of independence, Korea's partnership and contribution is vital.
If you go to Korea, there are some stones kept in the grave of which well preserved even today. Those stones are found only in India. So that bit cannot be a lie that it is a princess from here, because the evidence is there. And see, the fact is, Buddhism emanated here.
Thus, when India engaged in Korea during the War of 1950 to 1953, it was not an isolated intervention. It was the modern chapter of a relationship rooted in civilizational memory, a continuity of connection across time, faith, and struggle.
And today, if you see the high-rises, the technology, the music that comes out of Korea, the Korean soft power, it's amazing, isn't it? In fact, India has partnered with them to create the K9 Vajra, which is one of the most modern artillery systems. So it's something that we really are benefiting. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship.
This relationship grow by the day, and we contribute how each country can be strengthened and what a mark we can make jointly one day in the geopolitical perspectives, in security perspectives, or in conflict prevention for the future.
Future of India-Korea relations is projected to evolve from a specific strategic partnership into strategic co-production partnership, where both nations align their economic ambition, technological capabilities, and their skill to navigate a course mutually beneficial to both the countries.
India-Korea relationships have been strengthened by ties of trade and economy as well as investment. People-to-people interaction has increased considerably, and the K-wave and Korean culture is a very strong part of what today's young urban India aspires to.
I hope our two nations will continue to build on this friendship, working hand in hand toward and peaceful coexistence of Korean Peninsula and our mutual prosperity.
India and South Korea are special strategic partners, and there is a lot of goodwill in India for the people of Korea, or in South Korea for people of India, and in our desire, ambition, aspiration to be Viksit Bharat by 2047. Korea can play a big role in India's industrialization and to facilitate Make in India.